This is Pete Feenstra on Thursday the 4th of October 2012, and for the talking to Pat Travers on my right, guitar.
That's right. Hey Pete,
still doing it.
This is your first show, right?
This is your last of the UK tour, right?
Yes, it
and
is.
This is the first time I'm doing this interview for GetReadyToRock.com. First time I've ever had a Paul Reed Smith or any kind of guitar in my lap.
Really? I find it hard to believe.
Yeah, this is a really cool piece of work. And what do you got there?
This one here is made in Maryland, where Paul Reed Smith guitars are based.
Yeah.
The one you're holding here is their cheaper version. They're made in Korea under license, but that's like a $300 guitar, and this is like a $3,000 guitar.
As well.
Well, it's basically a copy of a '57 Les Paul
Right.
TV. If you were to put a '57 Les Paul TV side by side, you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference.
I can't play this. You can
Well,
play that.
I use this one for my slide stuff, and it's an awesome guitar.
Do Red House on this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This one here, this is what's called a custom 22. 22 means it has 22 frets.
Got it.
And it's a single cut. These here are what are called cutaways. If there's two of them, one on top, one on them, then they're called a double cutaway.
Right.
This is a single cutaway. Now, when he started making this guitar, Gibson got a little annoyed and decided to sue him, saying, "You're copying our Les Paul." And so he had to stop making them for a while, and this was one of the last ones they made before they stopped making them. They won the lawsuit, or they didn't lose the lawsuit, and they can make any kind of guitar they want now.
Well, we look forward to you playing.
These are awesome guitars. I'm very happy to be playing them.
That's great. We're going to talk about your brand new album, your first blues album since 1992, I think.
Yeah.
Blues Tracks, was that the last one?
Well, I mean, I did these albums for a guy out in California, Mike Varney, and he started a blues label called Blues Bureau. Yeah. And what he did was he got mostly rock guys like myself, and said, "Play the blues." Yeah. And
were you happy to do that?
Well, yeah, I was for a while, and then some of the records, some of the CDs I made for him, I didn't really think they were all that bluesy.
Right.
You know, they were
No.
blues.
There's a lot of that going on.
But this current CD, the Blues on Fire one that we're talking about, is a completely different thing. I got approached at the beginning of the year by a fellow named John Lappin, who works for Cleopatra Records in Los Angeles.
That you were involved with before.
Yeah, I do work with them off and on. They do a lot of tribute albums, and so they asked me, "Can you sing on this song? Can you put guitar on that? Can you do that?" So I call it busy work because you know I would go in, record it, get paid, and never hear it again. You know, so it just gives me something to do. But I'd done this Black Keys tune for them where I sang in my falsetto voice, which I don't often do.
Oh.
And I don't know if that was what prompted it or what happened, but he sent me an email and said, "Hey, can you cover 12 songs from the 1920s?
Oh, his idea?
It was his idea. I don't know if it was his alone, but that was the first I heard of it. And I went, "Yes, I can."
Did you have to go and research that stuff?
And I did, but it was interesting. And the thing was that I'd already done some research prior because I've been listening to a lot of Chicago blues like Muddy Water, Howlin' Wolf on AOL radio. And so when they played the song, they have the biography of the artist. And in there, they would list some of these characters, Blind Lemon Jefferson, Charlie Patton.
They're all blind.
Well, there were a lot of blind guys. I don't know if they were all actually blind, but they inserted blind, and I'll get to that story in a bit. But so I had read a little bit about the artist from that time period, and most people think Robert Johnson, but really he was in the middle of the 30s. He only had 2 recording sessions, and nobody knew who Robert Johnson was when he was alive. It's only because his recordings survived that we think. We have the false impression that Robert Johnson was some huge star. He wasn't.
Still a hell of a legacy, though.
Oh, and he wrote some amazing songs, and he ended up owning his own publishing too. And it went on to his sister.
He was ahead of the game, you know.
Well, not by his own volition. It was just because it was a government-run guy who recorded him. So they said, "Here, you know, fill out this form, or at least put your mark here, or whatever." And after he died, and not until many years later, early 60s, I think 62 maybe, was when the first real collection of Robert Johnson stuff was available. At any rate, after like the Cream did Crossroads and all that, you know, and Sweet Home Chicago, everybody's covered that. I mean, he wrote that, right? And so his sister collected all the royalties, and that was one of the few instances where somebody like that actually managed to, you know, the estate ended up owning their own royalties.
So in terms of the actual songs on your album then?
Well, what happened? Yeah, they were. Like you say, I would get up in the morning and I'd pick an artist like, say, Blind Willie Johnson, who I knew nothing about. But, you know, you can Google, and then all of a sudden you got Wikipedia, and you can start reading the history, and there's some photographs, and then there's recordings, and then you can find the lyrics. And I found this song, Nobody's Fault But Mine, which obviously Led Zeppelin did a song called Nobody's Fault Mine, but no way is it the same song, completely different. So that was my first one that I did, and I was going to use that as a template for this album, because it was mostly acoustic. I had a little bass and drums, but that was it. Other than that, it was pretty much like the original version. But then as I went along, I couldn't resist and started doing some heavier guitar stuff. And
what's what the fans expect?
Well, actually, there's this. I remember the day that took that turn, and it was kind of a sad day. It was a very sad day. I woke up. It was a Sunday. I got up about 9 a.m. and my wife had this sort of funny, strange look, and she was bringing me a coffee and. And I'm going, what's going on? You know, what's happening here? You're being a little too nice to me, you know, for a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. She says, Ronnie Montrose is dead. And I went,
what a shame.
And I just, at that point, really didn't know any of the circumstances. Didn't know it was a suicide. Didn't know it was a gunshot, self-inflicted gunshot. Was just trying to figure out. It was very difficult to know what was going on. And I did get a call later in the day from somebody who was pretty sure they knew what was happening, and they told me, but they said, look, I don't know for sure. So I kept it to myself, didn't tell the guy. The guys were close to him, guys in my band as well. At any rate, I had to go into the studio that afternoon, and I just figured, you know what, Ronnie loved these fifths where you just let them ring out, you know, so I went.
That was an inspiration,
Came up with this Black Dog Blues riff, and
so that was the starting.
That was the start of it getting pretty heavy, you know, and not really.
Well, it's true to what you are. I mean, nobody would expect you to be doing, you know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that was the thing. Nobody gave me any guidance. It was just, can you cover 12 songs from the 1920s? It didn't, and that was it. That was my instructions.
You've more or less gone from not long before from doing the Pat Travers Power Trio.
Well, yeah,
so
they were much more contemporary songs, and the other interesting aspect about these songs, two things. They didn't really have drums back then, so they didn't have this mindless pedestrian foot stomp beat that everything has to anchor around. Everything followed the vocalist, you know, and they wouldn't, like, we go line, line, change chord, line, line, back to the first chord, then to the third chord, chorus, start over. That's basically Western pop music.
That's how we did it.
I mean, you know, the Beatles did it. The Beatles were a little cleverer with it, but in a lot of these music, it's not like that. There's one song, there's only one line in each verse, and he sings it 3 times. And now
that's where you have to bring the feeling, I guess.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. Or you know, when it goes to the second chord. You know, that's kind of a standard change. It wouldn't do that.
Straight on ahead.
Yeah, it would come in at a different, like a half a beat through it, or follow the vocals. So I found that all very interesting, but I found it interesting. I realized that I had to try to make this accessible So that's why I kind of tried to come up with these hooky parts on the guitar, and then I was really, with the lyrics. The lyrics were the things that got me the most. I thought the lyrics were really, really cool on a lot of these songs.
They lay it on the line, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. There's one song I do by Sunhouse, and he recorded that song for the first time, I think, in 1929. It's called Death Letter. The lyrics in that song are so real and so in your face. You know, when he says, I walked up close and looked, you know, he finds out his girlfriend is dead. There's no why or how, and he shows up at the morgue, I guess, or whatever, and he says, I walked up close, looked down on her face, you know, when I got there, she was on that cooling board. They called the morgue table the cooling board,
Well,
you know, and it was really real, you know, it wasn't couched in any kind of flowery lyrics.
Well, the fact that people are still playing it all these years later tells you, you know. It's
well, I never heard the song before,
really?
but that was my first experience with it, and of course when Sunhouse did it, he had this cool little rhythm thing that was his signature, so it sped the song up a bit and made it sound a little happy. And I thought, no, these lyrics need to, you know, I need to slow this down and just sing these lyrics in a kind of a traditional blues style.
Yeah.
And on the recording, on the album, on the CD, it's just me and one guitar live. And I think
on that track?
Yeah, that's the third time I did it. I think I did it once. A couple of days later, I did it again, and then it was like an afternoon, and I was driving around in my car or something, and I just went, I gotta go do this song right now. So I drove over to the studio and I said, I'm ready to go and do this again. So it's all one take, vocal, guitar.
Let me ask you, why have you got, why don't you record the band that you tour with? Is that just circumstance and geography and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Sandy, I live in just outside of Orlando, Florida, and Sandy, our drummer, lives in New York.
Okay, so you're talking about
Kirk was in Orlando, but he's moved back to Houston, Texas. Right. And Rodney, my bass player, although he does live in Florida, he's about 2 hours away from me. And on this album, I really didn't. It was a different thing. It wasn't a band thing. It was me finding these artists, learning about them, trying to find a song, trying to take that song and make it accessible to modern ears, contemporary
I think you've done that. It's great. And the album's called Blues on Fire. It's on Provo Records over here.
Is it? I did not know that. Is it?
Yeah,
no kidding. Okay, well you can also get it on Amazon.com too.
Okay, so that's good. I just got to ask you about your early career, of course, which is that really you broke over here when punk was happening. It was
my bad luck.
Well, you know, you were also something that everybody went to because we were all looking for guitar players.
Yeah, I guess, you know, if I'd realized that more at the time, I think maybe I would have made a bigger deal out of being the long-haired guitar player guy. It was difficult because initially I got, I had to do press. I was with a big record company, with Polydor, you know, so they had a big influence, and they arranged lots of interviews, and interviewers liked me. I did a lot of radio. And then the punk thing came, and the punk thing, people got to realize that it was a fashion trend like any other trend that's happened in London in the 60s or the 70s, and I saw it like that. I knew it, you know, and it was annoying. I mean, that's all it was annoying.
It was annoying for players, you know.
Yeah, well, and I was a player, and I wasn't a punk, and I didn't want to be a punk, and so it was my bad luck that just as I got my first major record deal and was starting to get going, everything changed, and it was I couldn't get anybody to do any interviews or do any press.
But I think by the time of Radioactive, you went more middle of the road anyway, didn't you?
Oh, I don't know what I was doing.
More keyboard stuff on there, and
but that was only because I liked the sound of the keyboards. I always did. I always liked the sound. I've never really yet gotten the sound that I hear in my head on keyboards on recording yet. Never. Well, close, but not the one I hear in my head. So
and you play keyboards yourself, of course.
Well, yeah, a little bit. I'd like to do it again. I have a nice Hammond at home that a friend of mine is storing at my house.
Okay. And back then you also played the Reading Festival, of course, about 80, 81 or so.
I did it twice. I did it in 76. Actually, here's the thing. I came to this country, I came to London in end of May 75. I went to Reading Festival in 75 and had Ligger passes. I was in the VIP section. It was the first time I'd ever been there. Next year later, I was playing at it. I mean, that's not bad.
You made a big impression.
That's not bad. To arrive at the end of May, have a VIP pass for the Reading Festival first year, and to be on stage the next year.
So what was the going back again, I think you were kind of discovered, if that's the word, by Ronnie Hawkins, is that correct?
I never thought about that. Maybe you're right.
I used to know him, he's a good guy. But,
you did?
Oh yeah, I did. Okay. I used to run a jam, I used to run a jam and he showed up one time, unbelievable. Long time ago. But then...
You know that, Pete? Yeah, that's something in common.
I'll tell you off camera, but then you seem to move to London. What caused that? How did you make that leap over here? Because that's what kick-started your career, really.
Well, I played with Ronnie Hawkins as a kind of like going to university, going to rock and roll school. I knew that. I knew that I wasn't going to be there forever. I was there almost a year. And as you say, I was just playing in a bar band in Quebec, which is a province next to Ontario where they speak French in Canada. And we played it was a big club. We played there like 6 nights a week, and we were the big item for there. But one night, Ronnie Hawkins and his entourage shows up, and he's like, "Kid, you're real good, and you just give me a call if you need a gig, right?" And I went, "Hell yeah!"
And that was it.
So I called him, and he said, "Well, I don't have a gig for you right now." I was about 19, and so I joined this other band for a week or two, and then he did call me. He said, "Kid, can you get your ass down there?"
That's exactly how he used to speak.
and I said, "Yes, I can." And so when I first got together with him, he handed me a stack of old 45s from the late 50s, the early 60s. He said, "Kid, I want you not only to play exactly what they're playing on this record, I want you to sound like they're doing." And I'm like, "Oh, come on, please. I want to sound like Clapton. I want to sound like Jeff Beck. I want to, play like Hendrix or whatever. I don't want to sound like king. But I did. And he told me, he said, "Kid, if you do this, you will be better than any 100 guitar players, because this will make all the difference." And he was right.
So how did you end up in London then after that?
Well, after about a year.
Was that a record thing?
After about a year of playing with Ronnie, I pretty much figured I'd gone as far as I was going to go there. There wasn't I didn't see anything down the road that was going to change. So I went back to Ottawa, which is where my hometown, and started talking to a couple of guys about what I should do. And someone said, "Well, you should go to New York or LA or London." I went, "Well, London, I could do." I said, "New York's just too scary for me. LA is just too far away. And I don't know anything about LA. I don't know. England, my mom was English, my dad was Irish, I was born in Canada. I have much more Anglo roots and can understand it." So I didn't feel like it was too much of a cultural difference for me, and even though it was, when you're 21 years old, shit just bounces off you, you just roll with every punch, and everything was new, and I really didn't care.
Well, the amazing thing is, and this kind of brings the conversation full circle because I'm running out of time here, but the amazing thing is that the key to your durability, if that's the word, has just been the hammerheads, all the people that follow you.
No, it's true. My fans are so wonderful, and
you've got such a loyal fan base, which is
I wish it had a little 3 or a 4 exponent up on the right-hand corner, but they are fiercely loyal, and they, especially in the UK. I mean, I really love my
never
fans.
forgot you. And tonight is the last night. This 2012, I should say, UK tour. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure
Thanks,
talking to
Pete.
you. We could do this all night.
Yeah,
it's been
we could.
great. It's Pete Feenstra for GetReadyToRock.com. Alan Kimber on the camera. Good evening.
Cheers.